Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our special guest is David Cole, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Business Council of Alabama. Also, the V-Team asks, what's next for gaming and lottery? And it's time for a legislative autopsy.
Oh, I feel good. Oh, boy, you never get used to the smell, do you?
We all might need some smelling salts. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, columnist and investigative reporter for APR. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, guys.
Josh, I've been calling this the post-mortem for the legislative session.
That's very appropriate.
After death.
Yeah.
But we sort of got a little autopsy here we need to do on a few things. And the first one is the gaming and lottery bill. There was a deal to be had, there was deals made, and then it just blew up.
Yeah,
What's next?
Well, unless everybody is wrong, and God knows that everybody has been wrong numerous times about this gambling bill, there should be a special session coming. I would guess sometime late August, early September. And I wrote for Thursday that the gambling bill is still alive out there, despite it dying several different deaths. But it's not hard to understand why. It's a good deal. It's a lot of money for the state. There are a lot of projects tied to it, and the biggest key here is it has the votes to pass. It always had the votes to pass. It was just a matter of getting people certain things in the bill that made them okay to go ahead and press forward with it. And they were right on the cusp of that so many times. And I think that it's everybody has kind of backed away from it a little bit. And I think now going forward, they're going to be able to kind of get everybody on the same page. I know the governor's office is going to require that everybody, the votes be there. They want to hear from leadership from both parties, and they want them some assurances that the votes are there.
Well, Susan, that makes sense. I mean, we know for certain that nothing big in Alabama ever happens without the Governor Kay Ivey.
Right.
Robert Bentley, not so much. He didn't get any big things done. The
Riley.
governor always has to Riley.
Not big good things, but
Well, not big good things.
I said it quietly.
Did refurbish the Love Shack down.
Oh, guys, don't go there.
Good. A lot of chandelier hanging.
This has got Governor Ivey is going to have to get behind this, and she has been behind this.
Right,
She's the one that's got to lead the charge here, or it doesn't happen, right?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And God bless her if she brings them in August and September, because the air conditioning in that building is awful. That is great punishment for not getting it done this session, which they could have got it done. We've never had all sides together, working together. The Indians and the racetrack owners, they were working together to get this done. That's never happened before. It was a prime opportunity to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, the Porch Creek, the track owners, all the stakeholders really did a great job.
They worked
coming together
very hard.
Something for the state.
That's one thing that made it so disappointing.
And held together. Held together through some tough negotiations on things. They stuck to it. They created the deal, and they held together on their end.
Well, and they are to be commended. I mean, I know that there are plenty of lawmakers that worked hard on this. I think one of the problems is not having, lobbyists there, whether people like it or not. Mm-hmm. The lobbyists many times act as a staff for lawmakers to get things done.
To actually read the bills for them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's I'll say the other thing about this is it is a good deal. I think if Governor Kay Ivey wants to go out and push this like she did the gas tax, I think the reception to that will be very positive from the voting public. The voting public wants a deal like this, and when you start tying to the projects to this thing, the infrastructure deals, the broadband, the health care, all of those things that go along with this, I think it's a very, very popular thing with the people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is so, and the polling shows it'll pass overwhelmingly.
Oh, yeah. I think it's, 70% now?
Yeah. Want to move on here. Governor Ivey did sign the medical marijuana bill into law. It is the most restrictive in the nation, Susan.
It is the most restrictive. The strength levels are very low, and it is in a pill form, I do believe. And it's finally, we're getting something done here to relieve some pain and agony that people are out there experiencing.
Well, and Tim Nelson and Mike Ball did bring this legislation forward. The opponents still see it as a pathway, Susan, to a gateway drug. And I always say gateway drug that I first knew of was alcohol at mom and dad's or my neighbor's house. And others were complaining about this being a plant derivative.
Yes, it is a plant. Most of our medicines are plant derivatives.
Yeah.
I have an herb bed in my garden full of medicinal plants. Okay, and I know a lot of people think this is going to cause some sort of social disruption and all that. Well, what kind of social disruption have opioids caused?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A prescription. Permission from your
but
doctor
opioids,
to
they
get
don't come from
addicted.
plants,
And that fox, the foxglove and willow bark and some of that stuff.
Yeah, digitalis comes from foxglove.
Yeah,
I have foxglove at our house growing.
Well, it's I want to head into this next one. We got about a minute and 30 seconds, but Brandon Mosley over at APR wrote a piece this week, said the social conservatives were upset over the session because medical marijuana, more alcohol delivery and that kind of thing. What's your take on that, Josh?
Well, I think they ought to be pretty happy about that alcohol delivery, so they'll stop bumping into each other at the liquor store, and trying to hide.
Well, in Etowah County, those that live in Attala go to the Gadsden liquor store, and those that live in Gadsden go to the Attala liquor store.
Well,
Makes it
You can
easier
cut
that
down
way.
all that travel.
There you go.
Well, I worry about the fact that our social conservatives are upset when 50% of the babies born in Alabama are born on Medicaid. Some 49% of the children born here are to unwed mothers. To me, it doesn't sound like the social conservatives are winning.
They're not doing anything, is the problem. Why aren't they addressing these issues instead of getting fixated on these small things?
Teen pregnancies, while down, or like sometimes 20. It's in the high numbers, which you would expect.
Yeah, and listen, we got some of the highest STD rates in the nation. We got some of the highest porn watching rates in the nation. I mean, look, the idea that we're this big, conservative bubble here is really only true outside of the bubble. I mean, inside of here, these people are doing all sorts of depraved things.
Well,
are you talking about the legislature or just in general?
Let's stop pretending this stuff doesn't exist. If they want to get something done, let's get something done about teen pregnancy. Let's get something done about people on Medicaid, to help them help themselves.
Yeah,
instead of just standing around and hitting it with a stick.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Your career isn't a job, it's a journey. Your next job could lead to bigger things, and you're in charge of how fast and how far you want to go. At alabamaworks.com, you can connect with employers and start working right now. Then chart your path forward with training and career planning tools. That next paycheck is great, but it's only the beginning. Start a great success story at alabamaworks.com.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Our special guest today is David Cole, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Business Council of Alabama. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you guys having me on today.
Always great to have you. You know, Business Council of Alabama represents a large cross-section of businesses throughout the state. There were some specific bills that y'all had a real interest in. If you could just, and they did pass, if you could give us just a highlight of those legislative matters that were important that did pass.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we'll give a quick run through of on any of these. But if you have any questions as I'm describing these, please feel free to jump in. Our top three pieces of legislation that were critical that we were able to get across the finish line in the first 2 weeks of the session. One bill we called COVID liability bill, which put some protection mechanisms in place for businesses from those who claimed they contracted COVID while on that place of business, whether it's customer or employee, so long as those businesses were following CDC guidelines and, using the 6 feet apart, PPE, et cetera. So we were excited to get that piece of legislation across the aisle, and we felt like that bill also incentivized those businesses to make sure that they were following those CDC guidelines, because if they did, they knew they could have protection from frivolous lawsuits. Another was the reauthorization of economic development incentives, which was critical because those were set to expire. And thanks to the governor and using her executive powers to bridge that gap so that those incentives could continue going until we were able to get in session and address those issues was extremely helpful. Another of which is important to all Alabamians, especially those that received any CARES Act dollars. But the way our statute in Alabama was structured would prohibit individuals and employees. They would have to pay state income tax on any CARES Act dollars that they received. So what we didn't want was for those individuals to receive those funds, those CARES Act dollars, and then turn around and have to pay state income tax on it. So we were able to fix that and certainly appreciate the legislature's support of that. Just a handful of other pieces of legislation that were priorities of ours were one that dealt with the classification of workers. Businesses were confused on which set of guidelines to follow when you're talking about when do independent contractors become employees. The federal guidelines and the state guidelines did not match up. And so we really appreciate Secretary Fitzgerald Washington at the Department of Labor for working with us on that to streamline that process and make sure those guidelines match so that it prohibits any confusion that businesses were having. Obviously, the medical marijuana bill was a very hot topic this legislative session. BCA did not have a position, but what we did do was incorporate language into the bill that would provide some protection mechanisms for businesses. And what I mean by that, Bill, is for instance, if a business wants to have a no tolerance policy, we felt like they should still be able to do that. And we also incorporated some workers' comp language into the legislation as well, basically just taking existing workers' comp statute and incorporating it into the bill. And we certainly appreciate Senator Tim Melson and Representative Mike Ball for working with us on that. Another bill that was important to us was one dealing with historic tax credits. That program needed to be reauthorized. It was set to expire, and it is a proven program that really helps historic regions of our state and also some of impoverished areas in our state as well. There are areas in Mobile and Selma and throughout Alabama where this program has had a lot of success, and so we wanted to make sure that we were able to extend that. But you can go to Mobile. Mobile's a great example, downtown Mobile and Representative Adeline Clark's district, and that region of the state, this program provided a shot in the arm that was desperately needed to revitalize parts of downtown Mobile. And because of that, private dollars are now coming in, and that area is growing tremendously. And so that's just one example of how those historic tax credit program has paid off.
I'm sorry, y'all were very busy. I want to get to a couple of questions that before we run out of time. One of the things that has happened, and I know the business community has said that they are not being able to hire enough employees. And one of the reasons that some believe is because of the added benefits the federal government has provided. Governor Ivey now has decided to opt out of those increased benefits that will stop on June 19th. What have you heard from the business community about needing workers and these benefits?
It's been across the board, from manufacturing to the restaurant industry to retail. It was having a significant impact on our businesses because as they are coming out of this pandemic, the demand for the goods that they provide is extremely high, and supply is low, but primarily because there's a tremendous challenge to try to get their employees back to work. And when those employees can make a little more or just as much or a little less than they were making while working, they're incentivized to stay at home. And it's been a tremendous challenge for our employers across the state. And since Governor Ivey made the announcement, and even though it's it was recently that she made the announcement, we've heard from businesses who are already reporting positive developments. People are coming back to work, and hopefully this trend will show even more next month and the months to come.
Well, I know that y'all have, and we're unfortunately running out of time because I got 15 other things I'd like to talk to you about. But one of the things that y'all have done is expanded the footprint of the Business Council of Alabama. It is a very proactive group that has, reached Republicans, Democrats, independents. It's really business focused, and I want to congratulate y'all on what a great job y'all have done in promoting business, good business around the state.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on today, David. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinion.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. You know, Susan, our lawmakers and fellow Republicans were so outraged by mask ordinances, by social distancing ordinances, by ordinances that limited the number of people that could be in a certain place at a certain time. And even when Governor Ivey lifted all those ordinances, what did they keep doing at the State House?
They kept locking it down. There's no lobbyists allowed. The citizens are not allowed in there. You've got a skeleton crew of the press in there. Brandon said you can get the elevator anytime you want it. You can hear a pin drop in that. Speaking of hypocrisy, which we were addressing the last segment, geez, Louise, you got to, wear your mask. You got a 6-foot distance. All of this is going on in the State House. Meanwhile, they've been clamoring for everything to get open.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Josh, surprise, surprise. There's hypocrisy in the State House.
What? Get out of here. Those guys, they're not hypocrites. I mean, listen, it goes back to the whole thing about guns, right? Where they want everybody in the world to carry a gun, just not in the State House.
No.
You know, I mean, it's so ludicrous. You know, they clearly understand, and this is what bothers me so much about our politicians here, especially our conservative friends, is they see clearly dangers and problems, but as long as they can get a cheap vote out of taking the other side of this thing, that's what they do. And that, to me, is pretty shameful. And at some point, you've got to answer for the people who you're putting in danger here. And this is what this was. This was some of the things that they did and some of the rhetoric that they pushed and some of the false narratives that they put out there. It endangered people's lives in this state. Mm-hmm. And it caused us to have one of the lower rates of vaccinations in the nation and some of the highest rates of the virus in the nation. So, you know, those things don't happen by accident, and it's because the leadership in the state pushes that sort of nonsense, while in the meantime, they clearly know that this thing is a danger to them because they're masking their asses up.
Well, that's like Susan hitting them with a stick. Neither one of you just made any sense with the last two statements.
Well, the legislature doesn't make any sense.
He's having them mask their booties, and you're hitting problems with sticks.
Mask them and then hit them with a stick.
We've had, 3 months of nonsense going on? Jesus.
Well, I tell you another thing that I thought was interesting. They passed a ban on vaccine passports. Nobody's clamoring for vaccine passports, but businesses under this ban can still demand that people, wear masks or be vaccinated and all that. I mean, Josh, again, we have a pandering bill, but what can people still do? People can do this. They can mandate these things.
Yeah, of course you can. If you're running a private business, you can absolutely tell somebody, listen, either you're not coming in here unless you show me proof that you've been vaccinated. You're not coming in here without a mask on unless you show me proof. I mean, aren't these the same people that were all up in arms because we were going to force a baker to make a cake for a certain wedding? And so now we're going to force them to allow people that might have the virus into their stores and endanger their employees. What are we doing?
Susan, I mean, do you really think the honor system is going to work?
Oh, please. No, it's not going to work. Because people are going to say whatever they want. They're going to say to get whatever they want. I mean, that's just pure human nature.
Yeah. I mean, you're going into a bar and you go, I got a vaccine card and I've got an ID that says I'm 21 when I'm 16. But, people will do that.
Exactly. People are going to do whatever they have to do to get what they want.
Well, I think it goes down, listen, I think that Senator Reid and Pro Tem Reid and the Senate did a lot of good things. I think the House did a lot of good things. Mm-hmm. But I also think they continue to do these pandering things just because they have to appease a very, very small sliver of Alabama.
And it's so obvious.
Josh, one of the things that didn't happen is no action on prisons. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, a matter of fact, on Thursday, the Department of Justice amended their they're filing against the state to say that in the 2 years since they first alerted Alabama officials to the problems within the prisons, nothing has changed. As a matter of fact, they've gotten worse. We've had more deaths in here since when they originally came in and filed the lawsuit. If you can imagine that. And I have no idea what it takes to get fired as ADOC commissioner here, because if you can screw up everything and still hang on, then I think that's a problem. Again, I'll say, I think Jeff Dunn is well liked by a lot of people, and he's probably a great guy, but this is a failure of epic proportions in our corrections department, and I don't know what else needs to happen.
Well, Susan, I mean, it's going to have to be more than just building prisons. While that's a help, but we didn't really get the justice reform legislation that should have been passed this session.
We had a very nice several bills in a package for justice reform, that went anywhere from diversion programs to sentencing reform, and they got nothing done. They bothered with all these other tiny pandering bills, but got nothing done that really mattered.
Right. I mean, Josh, we spent days talking about what was going on in Colorado. We spent hours and hours talking about, the things that never, ever came to the floor. So I don't know what we did, really. I don't know.
I mean, it was just like, a perfect summation of all this is how in the last, 48 hours of the session, you had people talking about, well, you know what, maybe we should do a prison bond deal and get that through. This has been, again, the DOJ filed this lawsuit 2 years ago. And so, 48 hours left in the session, like, hey, I got an idea, guys. How about a prison bond deal? It's just, that's the absurdity, and that's how much care we have for what's going on with this. Yeah. And it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us billions of dollars. You just wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Well, I'm going to take, as they say in the Senate and the House, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege. We learned this week that Senator Jim McClendon is not running for re-election. I think that is a huge, huge loss to the state, Susan. Jim McClendon's one of the most honorable and honest men I know. We've known him for a long, long time.
And he works so hard for the benefit of Alabama. It's going to be a great, great loss to our legislature.
And Josh, you know Dr. McClendon, and he's always been generous to you to tell you what's on his mind and all that. And that's rare amongst politicians, right?
He's always been generous to tell me what's on his mind. He has no problem with that. But no, it's listen. I have I've never said out loud because I didn't want to hurt him that we've had great conversations and I respect him. And so usually when I say that about a Republican, they lose their next election. So but I think that Mr. McClendon is a good guy.
He's a conservative Republican through and through, and a dear person, and has been a great servant to the state.
And a great friend for many years.
Well, you're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.